Hello.
Hey,
Hey Norm,
Hi, Jannie.
good to see you.
Good to see you too. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well.
Yeah, I've
Yep.
been loving your crazy mix things that you're doing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, a lot of scratching on the turntable. It's fun.
I love that.
Thank you.
I've been sending it to people saying that Norm's doing what he does best, which is to keep us all smiling.
well, that's good.
Oh,
Pretty cool, Jan.
it's good to hear.
And actually, I didn't suggest you to Gene because he and I, had been talking about this, and he just sent me a message one day through Instagram with your profile, and he said, "How about him?" And I was like, "Oh, I love him. Yes, I'll
Oh,
definitely ask
wow.
him." So it
What a
came from
coincidence.
him.
I've been stalking your profile on Instagram, but I really like what you're doing.
Thank you.
Is How did that all start? I mean, like, how did you say, I want to put some stuff up on a fence and make art? I mean, how did that?
Well,
Were you
well,
walking by a fence and you were like, "This is ugly. I need to do something"? What happened?
um, well, there was a couple of things that were happening at the time, but there was another artist who was doing it with string, uh, and they were doing sort of like graffiti style three-dimensional block lettering.
Hmm.
The artist that I'm talking about is Hot Tea, um, but that's part of the inspiration, as well as I do a lot of framing of my drawings, and I've had a lot of experience stretching canvas and a lot of preparation and this and that, and to be able to go out on the fence whenever I want is it's pretty liberating.
And how many years ago was that? Was that like 5, 10? How?
I think it's been about, I would say five or six, maybe 5 or 6
Wow.
years. Yeah.
Wow. And you use fabric now, so it's a lot.
Yeah, for the most part, I've dabbled with ribbon, and I might start using some more durable material like a paracord. Um, so we'll see. I don't know how that's going to work though.
Yeah. And when you, so do you just find a spot, or you're just like walking around and you're like, this is the spot for a one of my pieces, or you how does that work? Do you just,
Um,
sorry, I'm very curious today because I'm excited about the work. Sorry.
well, it's funny. Today I was walking around. I didn't have any material on me, but I was thinking, oh, how great it would be to just go out without any plans and just go from like a fence to another fence to another fence. I don't think I do that as often as I'd like, but most of the time I'll scout out a spot if it's on a corner somewhere where cars aren't really parked in front of it, if it's lit well, the way the sun might hit it during the day. There's a lot of different things that happen, and some of the things that happen are a surprise after I put it up, which is nice too.
Cool. How do you get the proportions right? Because if I were to throw up some paper on a on a fence, it would not look like a human being. It would look like I don't know what. But you tend to get like a lot of action and like bodies, and I just, do you do like these complicated mathematical like calculations? No.
No, not really. Um, I think at this point it has become a grid to a certain point, but I'm not necessarily counting out, the spaces in between. Although there are times if I'm doing something like a heart, for instance, I know there's like a specific amount of links that it goes up to make a symmetrical heart that looks good. Other than that, it's not really calculated out too well.
So if one day like the fence manufacturers decided to make different kinds of squares on their links, you would be kind of, you'd be screwed a little bit.
No, I don't think so. Any grid really works.
Cool.
Yeah, I've experimented with like just a metal grid that's, they sell at Home Depot, and I sort of stretched that around stretcher bars.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I just bought some chicken wire today because I was planting some vegetables in the garden. So I was thinking about you. I was like, these are small little squares. I don't know how he would deal with this, but
I have done it with chicken wire. Yeah, actually, there's a jazz festival up in the Heights, specifically next to Riverview Park. There's a little tunnel sort of thing, and last year they had me do sort of like a banner going across the entrance with fabric woven into a chicken wire. So yeah, it could be done on anything, really.
That's cool. Where do you get the fabric from?
Most of the fabric was from an artist that I was working with at Mana for years, and I recently left there, but I still have a ton of fabric left over from that.
I think Jannie has some fabric that she could donate to you, right, Jannie?
Absolutely. But he's also, a lot of times, because he was working with this artist, it was actually canvas. So it was torn pieces of canvas.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's when I really started doing that, the fence art. When I first started working with this artist, he was doing painting on canvas that was very much like Gerhard Richter.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, he won a contest that Jerry Saltz put out, an open call to replicate different artists, but at the time, in this instance, it was to try and copy a Gerhard Richter, and Stanley won, and the prize was a studio visit from Jerry Saltz. So that's kind of how he got big, but then he sort of transitioned to doing more painting on silkscreen fabric, which is a synthetic material, which you cannot dye very easily, unfortunately, but I have a lot of it.
So you actually dye the fabric?
The canvas, yeah, I have. It goes back and forth between dyeing it and not dyeing it, but yeah, dyeing the canvas is a lot of work. So that's the other reason why I'm trying to look for something else, like these paracords I'm talking about.
Right.
They have different colors, and the color will last longer. So we'll see.
How long does one of these last before somebody destroys it, or it just falls, or I don't know? What's the average lifetime, would you say?
It's hard to say because they could be gone the next day. I've gotten better at like figuring out the spots, or maybe people are just so used to it that they're like, right. Oh, okay, I'm familiar with this. It could stay. So I guess it's changed over time, the length of time that these stay up, but it could be anywhere from like 1 day to, I would say at least a couple of years, 2-3 years maybe.
Oh, that's wild.
At the longest, if nobody touches them or messes with them. I think the weather has less of a factor than people realize. But at Asbury Park, for instance, on the beach, I've done some, and the fabric gets deteriorated exponentially quicker because of the wind and the salt in the air. So yeah, it depends where they're at too, I guess.
Cool.
The first one that I ever saw of yours, and I sent Eugene the picture and the story about that one with the umbrella, the couple on the people under the umbrella that you had over on Highway 139. That one is gone now, but over time, all that happened to it was that it actually faded. The colors faded to just, white or sort of a dingy, after a while they got very dingy. But it lasted for years. Like that, every time I walk by there, I'd be like, it's still there. Now it's a little bit whiter. Now it's totally white. Now it's getting a little dingy. But it stayed, and then pieces of it stayed for even longer. Like it was there a long time. I think it only maybe last year, finally the last piece went down, and I saw it the first time in 2015. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I wish I could take better documentation of them as the process of them deteriorating. That's something maybe I could look into a little bit more.
So your work will stay up longer than most people's artwork would stay up in a show. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way. So, it's interesting now too with the virus. There's really no show. There can't be shows really other than public art. So
everybody's doing the drive-by, and I think your art is more suited for that. So it's kind of a good inspiration for people to pick up something and use what's there. Use a fence. Use, I don't know, a wall. But
yeah, the street or something. Anything.
Do people call the cops on you?
No, I don't think anybody's ever called the cops on me.
Really? That's cool.
From what I could tell, I could be wrong, but
no one's ever pulled up and said, "Hey, what are you doing up there?"
No, that happens occasionally.
Yeah.
Less often now because a lot of people know about it.
Yeah.
But if I were to go into a city where I never did it, people might not. It would be different. I'd have to sort of start from square one again, maybe, and I don't know. Because I did it in Philly once, and somebody had a problem with it, which was weird.
That is weird.
Because there was a general, like an art vibe in the area, and there was even some, I'll call it fence art, something similar to what I do in a way across the street. So I didn't think it was going to be a problem, but I don't know.
What do you prefer, doing a traditional mural or this? Or you like both?
I do like both. I guess at this point I'm better at making fence installations, but I do feel like the application of color and the use of color with murals is much easier, and it stays longer. So I guess they both have their pros and cons. The fact that I could just go out to any fence and make my art, that means a lot to me, like I said earlier. So you can't really do that so much with murals. You have to get permission really, or else consequences, I guess.
So what came first, the music or the fence art?
Oh, I've been DJing off and on for a while, maybe about 20 years now. But so I put it down for a while, and then I pick it back up again, and so it comes and goes. But so I think I'm a little more committed to visual art than music, but I enjoy both.
That's cool. Yeah, I was checking out you did something recently, and I think that's what you sent to me, Jannie, or something like that. Was that it?
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Thanks.
He also started doing these things that, were large, and some of them are smaller, but some of them were quite large, that were on canvas, sort of. And you could really describe more what you were doing, Norm, than I can. But when I saw it, it's those big canvases that you were doing that were like the, the geometric shapes that were kind of like some of the things that you were doing on the fences that were not figural.
Uh-huh.
They're just, and I don't know if you saw those, Eugene, but they were further down in his feed. Yeah. I can send you some of the, I went nuts when I saw those, because I was like, oh my God.
What sort of size are we talking, like?
Well, there's one back here, if you can see it.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
That one is
a small one.
Yeah, that one's a little smaller. It's I'll get a little closer to it, but that one is 36 square, I believe.
Wow.
The first one I saw of those was the size of a large wall. It was huge. It was like 6 by 6,
wow.
I think.
It's very trippy because you have the darker and the light. That's very cool.
Thank you.
It almost looks like it's electrified. Like there's a a light in there of some sort, but it's just the color, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I'll send you one of the first one that I saw, Eugene. It's like all of these
that one's
yellows
actually
and oranges.
back there. It's rolled up. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is huge.
Yeah, it's much
What is
bigger.
that, a 9-foot canvas or something? Wow.
I think that might be 7 foot once it's stretched because there's some room around the edges. But yeah, it's rather big, and I have to figure out how I'm gonna stretch that and where I'm gonna hang it. So it's rolled up for now.
I don't ever want you to stretch it. I love it. Unstretched. You have to keep that one for me. I don't have anywhere to hang it, but keep it unstretched for me.
Well, you have so much free space, Jannie, on your walls.
Keep it in your house.
Yeah, the only problem is that with that is you got to keep putting staples every time you move it, and it's hard to. I don't know. It's just a lot easier, I feel like, and it looks nicer when it's stretched. But that's just me.
I love the way that I'll send it to you, Eugene. I think you'll see what it looks like tapestry, but it has the reason I was thinking about it is it has that look that you were describing, that it looks like it's lit somehow, but it's just canvas. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like
it glows.
What was that game that kids have where you draw lines and they light up? Not Etch-a-Sketch, but it's the
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like green and bright yellow and bright pink. Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I can't remember what it was.
Very cool.
But yeah. And it's almost like when people at nighttime, when they have those glow sticks and they do those in the air, it's almost like that feeling too.
Yeah.
Cool.
So don't do anything with that. Leave it in your corner, rolled up. I will pay you to keep it that way.
Storage fees, all right.
Actually,
no, I love that piece.
That's a good business for you. You could do like art storage and have a gallery in your house and keep moving things around. That's a great idea.
He has a gallery, not in his house, but I don't think you live there.
I actually moved out. I left that space recently.
Oh yeah?
And I moved in with Emily.
Oh.
So now I'm downtown Jersey City, Newark Ave.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So you show
that space was great, but I just couldn't afford it anymore.
So this is a gallery you're sharing with someone, or a studio space?
It was a gallery that I had on my own, and now this space is more like a live space. The space I was in was great; it just didn't have a kitchen. It was just a long basement, garden level, I should call it.
Yeah.
50-foot wall that was just great for art shows, but it was too expensive, and without a kitchen, it's really hard. So.
Yeah. Are you being repped by anyone these days? Or are you working with any galleries, or what's the story on that?
No, nothing like that.
Maybe Jannie can rep you, right, Jannie?
There you go.
I try. I try. Definitely one of my favorite all-time people.
Oh, thank you.
He has so much stuff, Eugene. I mean, it doesn't even, the stuff that I sent you doesn't even hit the tip of the iceberg.
I can imagine.
It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
So your background is in sculpture then? Is that how it all started, or?
No, I went to art school for graphic design, actually.
Really? That's
Yeah.
cool.
Um, and I did drawing a lot in college. I didn't really take any sculpture or painting classes, really. Um, just sort of started doing that on my own after college.
Because I was checking out the wire figures. They're
Mhm.
they're three-dimensional, right? They
Mhm.
How big are those? Those are about
They vary from when they're framed, or sometimes I frame them, but they could be anywhere from something uh, like this big
right.
to this big, I guess. Um, well, the biggest one I framed was probably like 36 by 48.
That's
But
huge.
yeah, and if they get bigger, like I do wire sculpture mobiles too that sort of hang down from the ceiling, um, and those could be any height really. They're all sort of linked. These figures are sort of linked together and hang down. Um, so
Where do you
yeah,
source out the wire for that, or what kind of wire do you use?
it depends on what I'm doing, but I I almost always have to buy the wire. It's not something that I just get from an artist,
Right, right,
unfortunately.
right.
But there's a lot of times I use thermostat wire, um, which has a casing around the wires, and on the inside there's
Right.
5 different colors. So I use those a lot for sort of my figurative drawing wire sculptures. Um, but I try and experiment with different types of gauges. If I'm doing like the mobile type of sculpture, it tends to be a heavier metal, steel. I forget the gauge on it, but you could bend it, but it's a little bit harder to
Right.
make certain locking things. Like for instance, with that heavier gauge, it's harder to like connect pieces. So most of the pieces are just one thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So you must go to the hardware store and just like get lost in materials for hours, probably. Um, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I try to be a little more focused these days, but yeah, I definitely sort of wander around and think about what I could do with all these different things. But
Yeah. So what are you working on now these days? What's
um, right now, it's a little bit of fence art and a little bit of drawing.
really?
Yeah, um, outside drawing, usually a park or a building or something.
Oh, that's right. I was checking out. There's a park that you like to draw. That must be in your neighborhood. Is that right?
Um, I like to draw Hamilton Park. That's actually where I have my frame shop.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to draw over there. Also, I used to live by Van Borst Park. I did a lot of drawing at Van Borst. Um, so yeah,
That's very nice. Framing. What kind of framing do you do? All kinds, just fine art or whatever people bring you.
anything, really anything, as well as stretching canvas. Um, but yeah, I used to work at a frame shop, and I would do a lot of framing of my own stuff as I sort of learned how to do it, which was a good
Yep.
way to get
That's a
into
good
it.
way to do it. That's a good way to
Yeah.
cut down on costs. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And then over the years, I slowly bought all the equipment and materials that I needed to start doing it on my own. So that's sort of why I left Mana to do my own thing. The timing wasn't the best, I guess, but I don't regret it.
Oh, sounds great. Uh, Jannie, what else do I need to cover, or have you thought of anything else?
Well, occasionally, and I know it's not sometimes you can't do this, of course, but occasionally he'll do these things that he lights things on fire that he's put on fences, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Wow.
And he used to do that when he had this space that was his gallery, because he had more of a private sort of backyard there that he could do that without, having it be a public hazard. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he has some of it on video, so.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun. I was doing them on my own, and then I slowly introduced an audience member or two, and then last Halloween I just had as many people that were. I didn't announce it. I just had as many people who were at the closing for whatever show I had at the time. Just invited them in the backyard and did it for them. It was pretty fun.
That's amazing.
And then there was also the thing, because I'm thinking also about the lifespan of the artwork and the sort of the planned obsolescence of it. There's the thing that you did for the show at the Antique Loft when Chef Paul asked you about, can you think about something for these windows?
Yeah, that was wild. I haven't really delved into that since then, but that was very, very interesting. I don't want to say experiment, but it was something that I don't think anybody's really tried to do before, which that's not always interesting in itself, doing something that nobody has done before. So you got to sort of tread lightly, I think, when you do new things. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
So that was wet paper towel on the glass, essentially.
Yeah.
So you cut out the shapes, slapped it on there, and it lasted maybe a couple hours, or?
Seemed like it. Yeah, it's some piece. I mean, I don't remember when the first piece started falling, but it was maybe an hour into it, maybe an hour and a half. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. Ephemeral.
It lasted pretty long. It did last pretty long.
I don't know if you're familiar with Andy Goldsworthy, an artist who does a lot of art out in the woods and stuff, but a lot of his ideas are interesting to me, and I think that particular installation was sort of inspired by some of his work. He'll take leaves, for instance, out in the wilderness and just use water to wet them and place them on rocks in a unique way, and the wind might blow it away seconds later. Or the other thing that he does is he had a documentary out a couple years ago, and he would wait for a storm to come, and right before it came, he would lay on the ground, and all the rain around him would stick to the ground, and whatever was beneath him would be a figure. So he would stand up and just sort of look at the figure as it sort of melded into the rest of the picture as it got wet. But it's an interesting concept to make something that with the idea and the intent that it's going to be
gone.
Yeah.
So that means, that brings into question, what is actually the art? Is it the thing you've created at that moment, or is it the photograph that you took of it, or the video that you took of it? That's really interesting. I mean, do you well, you obviously photograph everything you've done, but what do you consider more important, the actual witnessing of it going up or down or whatever, or seeing the image afterwards? I mean, if I think about it, I've only seen your work through images, so that's really kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it depends on how difficult it is to make something. I guess if it's really difficult, it might watching it go away or just seeing it go might not be that fun for you, especially if you made it. but if the easier it is to make, it's not as bad to let it go, I guess.
No. Wow. Wow.
It's also, it's the whole process of watching him do it too, because if you think about, I've never seen you working on a fence. Like I've only seen the work when it's done, but people do see you because you do it, and you're not out there in the middle of the, I mean, sometimes you might be, but sometimes you're out there in the middle of the day. And so there are people walking by seeing this guy doing this stuff. So there's a whole process of, and when you did the one at the loft, I arrived really, you had started doing it, but it was kind of at the beginning of your starting to put it up when I arrived, because you knew that you'd have to do it pretty close to the start of the thing, or else it would come down too soon. So there was a whole process about watching you create this thing, and and then you had a spray bottle in case it did start to come down too fast. You were spraying it to the
right, yeah.
So there was kind of a performance art aspect.
Yeah, it's sort of humorous if you think about it, because I'm trying to just stick, like make this thing stick with water, and it's just gonna come down eventually, or like real soon. I guess I just wanted like most of the people to see the installation before it came down, and yeah, it was interesting. So I wanted to prepare and get this thing ready, but at the same time, if I, like you said, if I did it too early, then it would have been gone before anybody got there. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
And it also, the intricacy of the pieces, it's when you think about the sort of the idea of it being something that is so short term, but the intricacy of actually the preparation of each of those pieces and the planning that went into that was an enormous amount of time. So when you think about all of this hard work and all of this thought, it wasn't like when you first sent me that image, because I sent to Eugene what you had sent to me from Mana that day when you tagged me on that picture of just the window when you were getting the idea. And the thing that came to my mind was, when we're little kids and it's around the holidays and we have, crepe paper and we are making designs and we, in little flowers and stuff, and we stick them up on the pieces of paper, or, make stained, we used to call it stained glass as little kids, because you'd make holes in the paper and you'd put it behind, the crepe paper behind that. But I was like, this is like such a huge amount of work that, it's not like some little kid's thing, but it's that kind of a feeling to it. It's very playful, it's very fun, but it's like a lot of hard work. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I think I gotta say, social media makes it a little bit easier to show people these temporary works of art that are gone quicker. I don't know how much of this I would do without social media, to be honest with you. So it's interesting.
Well, and I through social media.
What's that?
What'd you say, Jay?
Was I met you through social media.
Yeah.
That was the only way that we met, because I took a picture of that piece because I loved it so much and I posted it. And actually that was the first time that in my blog or on Instagram, that I had ever posted about art, because up until that point, it was much more about people who had stores or, basically places where they sold something. And, designers and artists who might be selling somewhere. But that was the first time I loved it so much. I was like, I have to post this. And I posted it, and I said unknown artist, and I gave the address, or the location of where it was. And then Ed tagged you on it so that I knew who you were. And then Eugene, I don't know if you know this story, I wrote about a little bit, but when I first went to the page to see what else Norm was doing and to see who he was, there's no pictures basically, or very few pictures of himself on his Instagram page. So I was walking around Jersey City wherever I went. And at the time I was working in Manhattan, so I'd be, you know, on and off the PATH train. Every time I was anywhere in Jersey City, I'd be looking around like, I wonder if that's him. I wonder, I was trying to figure out who this guy was from these, you know, sort of back of his head pictures and things that you really couldn't see him, and very few pictures of him. And finally, one day I was in the guy who had tagged him on the post that I did had a coffee shop a while back. And I was in that coffee shop, and this guy comes in, and Ed yells out, "Hey, Norm, how you doing?" And I was like, oh my God, it's
Yeah.
So that's how I met Norm. And it was only social media. I would not have known otherwise.
Yeah, social media is definitely a great platform for artists to get their work out there, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are being discovered that way. They're selling their stuff that way. I think it's bringing things down a notch and it's not so elitist anymore, or it's going in that direction, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, Jannie, I think we've covered a lot here. How do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely.